officials say that the suspect worked very closely with the CIA administration.
Because they let him in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? And you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person.
From the moment the first call hit the emergency lines, something felt deeply wrong in Washington, D.C. 2 National Guard members lay critically injured on a street only minutes away from the most protected buildings in the United States. And the suspect, identified as Rahmanullah Lakanwal, was a man the government once trusted with sensitive missions overseas. This wasn't a random act. It was a moment that shook the confidence of a nation already stretched thin by constant questions about safety, loyalty, and the heavy cost of decisions made years earlier. If you're joining for the first time, stay with me. What you're about to hear is the unfolding of a story that raises uncomfortable questions about responsibility and oversight, and why no one seems ready to answer them. Witnesses described hearing a sharp burst of shots and people running across the crosswalk as police vehicles swarmed the area. Officers pushed crowds back while medics worked on the 2 injured guardsmen, trying to stabilize them long enough to move them into ambulances. And then, as footage later showed, the suspect himself was taken away on a stretcher. The man at the center of the chaos wasn't unknown to the United States. He wasn't a stranger who slipped through the cracks. He was someone American intelligence once depended on with sensitive missions overseas. To understand how this moment became possible, investigators began tracing the path that brought Lakanwal from Kandahar to Washington. During the height of U.S. operations in Afghanistan, he assisted intelligence teams on the ground. He gathered information, helped map movements, and stood alongside American personnel during missions that shaped key decisions. For years, people believed individuals like him represented hope, local partners trusted enough to assist in volatile regions. But now the question sits heavy. How does a former partner end up accused of firing on U.S. service members in the Capitol? And how many decisions made long before this day set the stage for tragedy? As officials scrambled to piece together the timeline, the conversation quickly expanded beyond the shooting. The investigation forced agencies to examine years of vetting, relocation protocols, and emotional strain tied to overseas work. These weren't simple checklists. These were lives uprooted and placed into new environments without guarantees of stability or support. You have to ask yourself, when the U.S. welcomes former partners into the country, does anyone keep track of how they adjust? Does anyone check on their mental state after years spent around conflict? Or does the system simply assume things will work out until something goes wrong? Director John Ratcliffe's confirmation that Lakanwal once worked with the CIA sparked a national debate that still grows louder every hour. The public expected swift answers, but officials quickly shifted attention to legal definitions, charging documents, and procedural language, avoiding the broader fear building underneath. A shooting near the center of political power triggers reactions the government would rather control. And many viewers are now wondering why certain words aren't used to classify the event. Why the hesitation? Why the caution in labeling the attack? And why aren't leaders speaking with more urgency? As we continue, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss updates on this unfolding investigation. There are details emerging that could change the direction of the case. Investigators are now digging through every part of Lakanwal's life since his relocation to the United States. They're reviewing employment records, community interactions, mental health reports, travel history, and any potential conflicts he may have experienced in the months leading up to the shooting. It's a search for answers the public feels they deserve, but also a search that exposes how much the country doesn't know about those who once risked their lives to assist American forces overseas. Many of these individuals lived under constant pressure abroad, and when they arrived in the U.S., they often faced the struggle of building a new identity without the support system they once had. His background forces people to confront a difficult truth. The government once depended on him. They brought him here. They cleared him. And now they're left explaining how he transitioned from being a trusted partner to a suspect in a violent attack on service members. And while investigators examine the facts of the shooting, families of the injured guardsmen face a long road ahead. They expected safety while serving their country in a city heavily monitored by cameras, patrols, and federal agencies. Yet danger found them anyway. Danger that, according to the public, should have been detected long before this moment. Within hours of the incident, social media exploded with speculation, anger, and questions directed at the administration. People demanded tougher oversight, stronger security procedures, and clearer communication from leadership. Others pointed to the emotional toll placed on people who transition from war zones to American neighborhoods, arguing that the lack of long-term support might create conditions that officials fail to recognize until it's too late. The tension between these viewpoints continues to grow, and each emerging detail adds another layer to the conversation. As you listen, think about this. If someone once vetted by the government, someone once trusted with intelligence tasks, can become the center of such a serious investigation, what does that say about the systems meant to protect citizens and service members? And how many gaps exist that the public never sees until events like this force them into the spotlight? The response from federal agencies remains carefully measured. They speak about ongoing reviews, multi-agency cooperation, and active assessments, yet avoid acknowledging the deeper responsibility many Americans feel is being sidestepped. People want clarity, they want leadership, they want accountability, and they want assurance that the shooting of two uniformed guardsmen in the heart of the nation's capital will not be reduced to another file added to an overworked investigator's desk. As this story continues to expand, stay tuned. There are still unanswered questions. Questions investigators haven't explained, witnesses haven't clarified, and officials haven't addressed publicly. What was happening in Laconwall's life in the days before the shooting? Did anyone notice changes in his behavior? Were there warnings? And if there were, who failed to report them? Each question pulls you deeper into the investigation, revealing the weight of decisions made years before the attack took place. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, remember to follow for the updates still ahead. Officials are now reviewing communications between agencies, checking whether important information was shared or overlooked. They're also testing how long-standing protocols handle individuals with extensive overseas history. This includes psychological stress testing, reintegration processes, and security reassessments. It's a reminder that unseen pressure can build quietly, and if no one intervenes, the consequences fall on innocent people, people who signed up to protect the nation. And now, as federal partners coordinate behind closed doors, the public is left waiting for transparency, waiting for explanations, waiting for someone in leadership to acknowledge the gravity of what happened instead of reciting prepared statements. But for now, this investigation continues to widen, and the truth behind the shooting is still emerging. We're far from the end of the story, and the deeper investigators go, the more questions rise to the surface. Stay close, because the next part of this investigation will challenge what many people believed about safety, trust, and the hidden complications behind government partnerships that outlived the wars they were built on.
Agents moved quietly between offices today, carrying sealed folders with expressions that revealed more urgency than their official statements ever would. Every new update expanded the scope of the investigation, pulling more agencies into a situation many admit they were unprepared to handle. As more interviews were conducted, a pattern began forming, one built around small incidents that, when isolated, looked harmless, but when placed beside each other, raised clear concerns. Moments that were ignored, overlooked, or dismissed because no one imagined they would amount to this. Neighbors described seeing someone who kept to himself, rarely causing trouble but never fully adjusting to the environment around him. People noticed the distance, the restlessness, the long hours spent alone, yet no one thought to report it. No one understood the responsibility that comes with recognizing signs early, especially for individuals carrying the weight of years spent in conflict zones. And now the consequences of that silence sit heavy across the city, leaving people questioning their own decisions and the systems they trusted. If you're watching this investigation unfold, remember to subscribe so you don't miss the next steps. More information is arriving by the hour, and each new detail changes the direction of the case. Investigators are now reviewing digital records, messages, emails, search histories to determine if something in his recent activity hinted at an escalating mindset or a sudden trigger. Specialists familiar with transitions from war environments to civilian life warned about emotional strain, identity loss, and the difficulty of adjusting once the missions end. They raised these concerns years ago, arguing that without long-term support, people could develop unresolved pressure that grows slowly until it affects judgment, stability, and behavior. But those warnings never gained enough urgency. There were budget cuts, administrative changes, competing priorities, and political debates that overshadowed the need for preventative programs. Now those decisions echo through every interview, every report, every moment investigators examine what could have been done differently. Authorities also began revisiting the documentation from his arrival to the United States. They checked who signed off on the clearances, who handled the case, who approved the relocation, and who last conducted a formal evaluation. They looked for gaps in communication, delays in processing, and missed follow-up appointments. And the uncomfortable truth is that the gaps weren't subtle. They were noticeable, but no one believed they would carry real danger. It raises a larger question for viewers. How many lives depend on paperwork being processed correctly? How many tragedies begin with a file that sat too long on a desk? Every piece of this investigation challenges the assumption that the system is structured, steady, and reliable. Instead, it shows something more fragile, something that relies on individuals making responsible choices in the middle of complex, overwhelming workloads. And when a single critical detail slips through, there's rarely a second chance to correct it. Investigators are now seeking information from former officials who worked overseas during the early 2010s. They want to understand the nature of the relationship, the missions, and the expectations placed on local partners. They want clarity on how individuals were chosen, what they experienced, and what they carried with them emotionally when the missions ended. That process isn't simple. Many of the people who were part of those operations have retired, relocated, or shifted into private work. Convincing them to speak requires persistence, discretion, and patience, all while the public waits for answers. As the hours pass, the urgency grows. Journalists gather in groups outside government buildings, hoping for updates. Families of service members watch from home, wondering whether leadership will acknowledge the deeper consequences of the incident. Citizens debate online, each demanding explanations from different angles, some directing frustration toward security agencies, others toward policymakers, and many pointing to the long-term failures that continue to influence national safety. If you're still with me, stay tuned. This story is expanding faster than officials expected, and the next developments will challenge assumptions that many people believe are unshakable. Inside the investigation rooms, analysts compare old intel logs from Afghanistan with recent behavior patterns. They look for changes in tone, attitude, or personal connections. They study the toll of displacement, the loss of homeland, and the clash between past roles and present expectations. They consider whether the transition placed him in an emotional position he was not prepared for, something that might have intensified over time without proper support. Professionals familiar with the emotional impact of service, both foreign and domestic, have stepped forward emphasizing the need for accountability on all levels. They argue that every agency involved should be examining their procedures, their oversight, and their assumptions. They highlight that the country often celebrates the heroes who support missions abroad, but fails to provide structured care once they're no longer needed. And now the entire nation is seeing the consequences of that imbalance. Digital experts are also searching for any online interactions that may reveal recent conflicts. They analyze posts, messages, and communication patterns, trying to determine if he felt isolated, overwhelmed, or frustrated. They look for sudden changes in mood or decision-making. And while the specifics remain sealed, sources indicate that investigators found inconsistencies, moments where he appeared emotionally stable and moments where something seemed to shift. As you listen, consider this. The burden of reintegration doesn't fall on individuals alone. It falls on the systems built to protect both them and the communities around them. When those systems fail to notice growing pressure, tragedies become possible. And once they happen, everyone looks for someone to blame, even though the signs were present long before the incident took place. Authorities are now expanding the investigation into his personal history in the United States. They are checking past employment, training programs, financial records, and community outreach interactions. They want to know if he sought help at any point, or if he quietly carried unresolved pressure without speaking up. They want to understand whether he felt supported, or whether the transition left him feeling stuck between two worlds, one he left behind and one he never fully understood.
Experts warn that transitions like this require extended guidance, routine evaluations, and continuous engagement. Without these, individuals can experience confusion about identity and purpose. And the truth is, once the public attention moves on from overseas missions, many of the people brought into the United States feel forgotten. They feel the responsibility of past missions, but receive none of the structure that once kept them grounded. If you're invested in this story, consider subscribing. There are more developments coming, and the details ahead will shed light on aspects of this case the public hasn't been told yet. Behind closed doors, some officials worry about the broader impact of the investigation. They fear new scrutiny of government partnerships overseas. They fear the public will question the reliability of vetting processes. They fear political pressure will intensify. And they fear the consequences of admitting mistakes that affected national security. Those concerns influence every statement made to the press, every response prepared for the public, and every decision about what information to release. Yet the truth remains. This investigation is far from complete, and the deeper they look, the more questions they uncover. Questions that stretch beyond one individual, one incident, or one moment in time. As the next phase unfolds, the weight of unresolved responsibility grows heavier. More interviews are scheduled, more records are requested, more agencies are called in, and the answers the public demands are still out of reach, waiting in the evidence rooms, ready to reshape everything once the details are finally revealed.